welcome back to the Talk Past podcast. I always try to figure that name out because it's one of those names. I am, of course, the host NC, and I am here with a guest,
I'm David.
Rabble Dabble. Of course, we're talking about with cast and crew of the channel itself, our fair stories and our stories regarding to medieval history and the reenactment and stunt choreography we do. So, of course, you were saying before we recorded. When did you start with the show?
I started with Sarasota Medieval Fair in 2010.
Indeed, same that I did. But how did you get into the show? How did you get into the fair?
I had actually visited the year prior and for 2009's fair, and I was like, I want to do this. I'm going to do this. And then literally the week before auditions, I was like, oh, I wonder whatever happened with that. And that's when I found out, and I was just like, oh, okay, well, guess I'm going. Prior to that, my only other hit with the medieval affair, I believe, was 2007, or either 5 or 6, actually, when it was out at Hunsader Farms.
Oh, gotcha. Did you have any sort of like historical interests or knowledge or anything that you did outside of obviously medieval fair and the current set of historical stuff we do beforehand?
As far as anything organized like that, no. My pretty much introduction or my initial thought was, oh, look, they're waving shiny metal objects. I want to do that. Um, Pretty much, I was a 4-year-old kid coming into it mentally. I was like, ooh, shiny. Is that sharp? Is that going to hurt?
Hmm.
All the usual, you know, you see a sword on a wall and you want to buy it, but then you realize, you're not old enough to buy it. It's like, mommy type situation, I guess, is
Mhm.
the only mental way I can think about that to,
Yeah. And then you find out it's a
um,
stainless steel sword and you can't use it. Uh,
yeah, pretty much.
yeah, like
Um,
I started out with the same group actually when I moved down on the cusp of 2010. I did the Harry Potter show with them that they did for Universal for the grand opening of the Wizarding
mhm,
World of Harry Potter,
yep.
and I had gotten into that from one person who was not the person I was living with at the time, who was like, "Hey, you want to do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, okay." And then Dean was like, "Hey, did you want to also do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And then everything was just like, "Yeah, okay." It's kind of like I got nothing to do. Let's do this. Whatever.
Yeah.
Sure. Riding the wave into a social life. Uh, of course, I've never really had any interest in medieval history, save for like a couple people like Vlad the Impaler. I always watch Vlad documentaries, or just a generalized enjoyment of like medieval games or whatever. I think my actual interest started around like 5 years into doing the shows. I was like, oh, we're actually doing stuff that's I'm starting to understand and be interested in.
Right.
Uh,
It's like,
did you?
I'll admit, I'm still not. It's like I heard all through rehearsals and everything, different people talking about their D&D campaigns. It's like, and to be honest, out of the 11 years since I started doing this,
Mhm.
I've never once played D&D.
Which is
Never.
weird because that's
It
like
is
the
because
bulk.
it's yeah, you can a lot of the references to how we go about creating, you know, the stage and the characters that we play is, so much like the start of a D&D campaign where
Yeah,
you're all, basically rolling for your stats.
I remember we used to actual have character profiles that were pretty much based off of D&D,
Mhm.
almost down to the wire. Not exactly,
Yep,
but
I remember those.
Yeah, actually, I did, and I will do more D&D episodes. But the first D&D episode I did here on the podcast wasn't even with someone that is in the group. It was someone that's in a personal D&D group that
Yeah.
comes to the show to check it out, but isn't part of our fight cast. But there's a lot of people that do that from fight, general, etc.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty much. D&D kind of. I feel like we're a specific group. Like you get your theater people, you
Right.
get your people that watch fights in the movies, and they just want to do that. All they care about is fighting. They don't want to act. They don't want to have a character. They just want to get on the field and fight. I just
Right.
well, it's fine. And then you get your actors, who they want to act, and that's their life. But
Mhm.
whether they want to fight or not, and then you get the other people, etc., who just kind of drift in between shows. Maybe they're only there once, or maybe they're just there because they're a relative or girlfriend,
Right.
boyfriend, cousin, whatever. But it's an interesting thing that we do.
Mhm.
Um, when was your first feature fight?
Oh, first feature fight was
Because that was with James. But
no. I had a
no,
fight before that.
oh, yeah, what was that?
Because that was my first feature fight was against Jera, and
Yes,
that was Irish Year. The year
yes,
after that
yes.
was the year you're thinking of, which was the Battle of
Cressy.
Cressy when I fought
Hmm.
James, the extra large battering ham of the
The
French that we had.
the buttery ham.
Yeah,
We'll just go down a
or
list of
the French
various
Alps.
hams. Hmm.
But
Yeah,
oh, that was great. I know because I knew I was going to lose that fight. Like throughout the process of or going through the process, you know, yeah, we choreograph our fights, and we know who's going to win, who's going to lose. But that's one thing I will have to say about that is we get to choose how we get there.
basically wrestling.
And right. And when I got yes, my first fight was against Jarrett, which was great. Irish Year, I had this, you know, at one point, one of the pictures, which is now immortalized on my Facebook, I had these like wild eyes. Like he basically like hit me once, and it was just, and it only happened that day. So I'm glad someone got a picture of it. But it's just for some reason in that moment, everything just,
It kind of puts you in the moment.
yeah, everything just
Like,
kind of like either, I could say clicked, but at the same time, it snapped.
sure.
Like a lot of
Like
people use, that, oh, he snapped on that person like it's a bad thing. No, in this instance, it was a very good thing.
sometimes, and we discussed this with the Bruce in the last episode, but sometimes those moments that aren't choreographed, that aren't planned, are actually the best because it makes
Hmm.
our show in the fights we do and the characters we try to represent both historically and fictionally. 'Cause not everyone gets a historical character. Sometimes it makes those moments feel real, not just to the audience who we're trying to pass off as if we're in the medieval times, but to us as a group. Like in 2010, of course, our first year, when, of course, our two directors got into a fight on the chessboard without telling anybody. Now, of course, back then I was a whole different person. I probably was mentally not quite 100% there, right?
Right.
Um, so like it didn't really phase me or anything of that nature. So I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Babble, babble. But
Yep.
for me, one of my moments of that was 2019 when I was King Alfred, and my during rehearsals, we were constantly coming up with a fight to do because I had Big Zack as my partner, who is
Hmm.
like 10 million times my size, um, and we have those
I
fights.
will. I will say this: there are certain people where you can look at them, be like, you know, their size. It's like you're waiting for them to make that comment. Like if just that one comment. Like if you were half the man that I was or that I am, when you just want to be right there at that point and just be like, look, I really am half the man you are. Like
Mhm.
literally.
Yeah.
Zach is one of those.
hmm but I also had another fight with a big guy, and I like pretty much all the fights I did. But in any case, we went through a fair variety of different moves that worked and didn't work. Obviously, keep everything safe. So
Mhm.
naturally, we had a lift up move that really should have been a choke slam, but I was not comfortable with because the show we do, of course, it's all of November, which means you're doing the same fight twice every
Right.
weekend. I was not. I did not trust myself to land safely every time because
Hmm.
I'm not really big with heights and stuff like that. I can do a back fall, you back roll, and all that stuff 10 million times a day, but I don't know, just something about that at the time. But at some point, I mean, it was a natural maneuver in what we were doing. It really was probably what we should have done the entire time. But at some point during the show, and I don't even remember when, but he does it. He just does the choke slam kind of out of the blue, and people were like, "Oh, is it real?" Ooh. And wonderful, wonderful friend, which is also his girlfriend, came to check on me in character.
Hmm.
And I'm like, it didn't really bother me. It kind of rattles
Right.
you, right? When you get hit or something goes wrong in choreo and you got to deal with it, whether
Yeah.
it's an injury or just kind of like a little pop, or even just some missed moves, right? Sometimes that
Right.
can be jarring too. But this one, slammed me like flat on the ground. Um, Twitch it rattles you for a moment, but then you're like, okay, whatever.
Yep.
I took that moment to milk it. I don't. I think I was only down for like 10 seconds,
Hmm.
but you can hear and see people reacting of our group, specifically our group.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when we do moments that other people in our group do not realize is about to happen, it makes the show so much realer. When you include that element of chaos and improv, if you will, it it raises the platform of what we do to a whole different level. Um, so
Yeah.
and then you come
I-
back and you just like you what? You choke slam me? I'm gonna kick your butt. I mean, I cut out swears, but I wanted to swear. Like I'm gonna. You know what? Earlier in rehearsal, you said I could beat on you. Well, I'm gonna do that in my what 5'6", 160 at the time self
right.
against this absolute wine barrel of a man, wearing chainmail and armor.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
which I don't blame him for the chokeslam. Think that nor judge. That's a move we actually should have been doing at the time. It was just my own limitations.
Hmm.
But after that, we went to the directors like, all right, we clearly need to do this move. How do we do it the way the wrestlers do?
Yeah.
And but yeah, no. As soon as you get up, you feel that energy. Not so much adrenaline, but you just kind of you go wild, and you realize this is your moment, and this is a
Hmm.
moment that you'll talk about and people will remember. So you kind of go
Right.
right in on that.
It's one thing to get. You always have that blur between what's fantasy and what's real,
Yeah.
especially whenever you're, you know, in a stage like that. Um, and
hmm
for people who are on cast, they see this fight constantly. They've seen
Every
it
yeah,
every
multiple times a
weekend,
day.
multiple times a weekend for the last, 3, 4 months, or however long we have for rehearsals. And now they're seeing it out on stage, and they know exactly where everything's supposed to go. And then all of a sudden, something like that changes.
hmm
Like in your instance, it was this choke slam.
In
That
yours, you get
line
up.
between what's real and what's faked and what's choreographed just goes away for them too. And all of a sudden, everything in that moment is real.
Exactly. Like,
And
'cause
for me, that's what I I always tried to do. Like
Mhm.
it took me a good, 4 years to figure this out.
Same. I mean,
Um,
even still, although we have some people on cast and some people no longer on cast that thought literally after like a year that they were experts. But I mean, even now,
no,
we're still learning. You're always learning. There's
yeah,
always going to be things that you can do and do differently that you wish you did better.
hmm
New techniques and moves and acting and historical stuff that you
yeah,
never knew, and now
and
you're going to do.
even
And
on the
you'll never be an expert.
no, and even on the opposite line of new things to learn, your body ages. Your body, you know, gets used to some things and then forgets how to do others. Like
Exactly.
my first couple years of doing it, I could do a back roll, no problem. Ask me to do it anytime Irish year to present, can't do it.
Yeah. See, that's one of the
And
things. The rolls backward, I'm fine with
hmm
because at the back, to me, it's like you're just laying down on a bed and rolling back, right? So I
hmm
don't know if you remember any of my back rolls. I kind of like do like a Shawn Michaels milking it kind of thing. If we want to reference wrestling, but forward rolls, stuff like that, I have a very hard time with because you're going head first and you have
hmm
to be absolutely perfect. You gotta tuck this and you gotta roll straight and you gotta blah blah blah. And there's so much
right.
more chance of an accident happening. Whereas for me, when I'm thinking of a back roll, I mean the worst that can happen is my chair creaks, by the way. I think of, okay, so I just lay flat down on the padded grass, and it's the
hmm
worst that can happen.
right. But yeah, I know. In fact, it was actually you, um, first year, Arthur year, um, that got me to realize the value of both forward and backward rolls. In one of our little show and tell fights, after everything had been taught, um, there was one section where I basically forward rolled over your blade,
Hmm.
rolled backwards immediately, and then like it was basically a progression of every roll that we do
Yeah,
within a quick like 5 or 6 moves.
and
And
it was probably us being like, tee hee hee, let's use all these moves because we learned that,
yeah,
rather than let's make a cohesive fight.
right.
But
No,
even
that's
even still,
exactly what that was.
it's about like back then when we were new, you thought it was about, oh, you got to perfect the technique, got to perfect the technique,
Mhm.
and then as you go along, you find out. Like for me, I'm just like, training fights. Yeah, I'll just find someone I want to fight with, and or a new person that I don't mind training, and then have fun with it. Who cares?
Right.
I don't. You get a fight or not, you're having fun.
hmm
Um, but it kind of comes more naturally as you get progressively into experienced, progressively experienced. But at
Yeah.
first, I was like, you gotta show perfection of the technique. You didn't get a fight. Okay, well, what do I have to do? Blah 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 blah. That was very big on me. Every
Right.
time I didn't get a fight, I don't care. I would just go right back out into the field and practice everything again,
hmm
um, because that's how you learn. But
Yeah. That's one thing I realized. And it didn't really sink in until my second year. Like, yeah, I was like, my first year, I'm like, okay, I'm out there. That's great. What do I care if I have a feature fight? I'm out here. I'm able to do this. You
Mhm.
know. Um. So what if it's my first year? Why do I want a feature fight? I'm there. I'm nowhere near as good as anybody else out here. And then
Yeah,
second year, I was like, okay, a lot of this stuff now is review for me.
yeah, and
Now, and then
oh,
when
go ahead.
the fights were decided that year, and I'm just like, okay, that's when it started to hit me. What did I do? My thought process was, what did I do wrong that kept me from getting a feature fight?
Yeah, my thought is how can I improve?
Right. Of course, glass half full, half empty type thinking.
Mhm.
Um, and it was like, what did I get wrong? And then It actually took a show and tell with Brandon. That was when he still had his dreads.
Yeah.
But where basically we switched weapons. I was so used to a sword, that I didn't really see anything else possible for me. Sword and shield, sword and shield. That's my weapons. That will always be my weapons. And then during our little show and tell, he's like, "All right, let's switch weapons." I'm like, "But I'm no good with a spear." It's like, "Are you sure? Like, you ever use a staff?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, that's a lot of what I, played around with as a kid." Um, and like, "All right, well, let's see what you can do." And that's when I started to realize it wasn't the fact that I did something wrong that meant that I didn't get the feature fight. It wasn't even that, I did everything right either. It's just I was limiting myself and it wasn't falling into line with what they were looking for.
Yeah. As we do more of the shows, I've come to understand what at least our previous, as of now, previous director wanted.
Mhm.
Um, and I would like to try to help new people understand that, in terms of what are we, the audience, looking for? What does the audience want to see?
Right.
And in all honesty, that's most of that is acting. You can fight all day, and it could be the most boring fight. You do perfect technique, but it's the most boring fight because you're just two stone-faced people having a fight,
You're
going through
just
the
going through the
motions,
motions. Yep.
and it's a dance that everybody knows is choreographed. If you cannot look like you are legitimately afraid for your life or ready to kill this person or whatever your character would be, that and that having that adds a whole different level to it.
Mhm.
Um, that I think is something that's glossed over. I mean,
Right.
obviously, it's built, it's hammered into you, intent, intent, intent.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I don't think new people, understand what that means. In a simple form, in a very grassroots, simplified form, people are thinking, oh, I gotta get a fight, or oh, I want them to do this, or I'm like, no, just focus on this. Don't worry about that, because guess what? There's gonna be years where people who don't deserve a fight get one.
Hmm.
They don't deserve it. It's just that you don't. It's that maybe pre- they're not at a level of prepared that you would hope someone to be when they do a fight.
Right.
And of course you get it paired up with an experienced partner and you work them along the way. So really it's not anybody doesn't deserve, undeserved or whatever, but it's everyone show is going to have levels of experience, and we're all guiding each other across the finish line.
Hmm.
Except I just feel now, now of course in the latter years, uh, that I can provide a sort of broken down way of helping people understand what is actually necessary to do what we want to the board.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's another thing that I realized too is it's not so much, how well you can fight. You know, um, even still, there are people I consider to be, our best fighters. Right.
mhm,
And I say that, and I'm pretty sure there's about three people that come to our minds that are probably the same people. Um, but at the same time, it's like we also have people who've come in and on their first year gotten a feature fight.
mhm.
And we have people who, you know, at that point had been in for a good 2 or 3 years and still hadn't gotten a feature fight.
Yeah, it took me 4 years, and it was mostly just mental, social state. It sometimes, especially for me, it takes a while to come around to things and understand certain things.
Right.
Like I had a MacBook Pro that died on me a couple years ago. 2 years ago, and lost some video stuff that could have gone on this channel that
Mhm.
I really miss because it was pretty incredible. But did it dawn on me at the time? Because I'm not a tech person. It
Right.
didn't dawn on me at the time to grab the hard drive. It's the thing that everything's on. Just take that out and you're perfectly fine.
Right?
And I probably just put a hammer to the computer and tossed it. That's gone. But I kept the motherboard because I paid for that. So it's
Right.
sometimes for me it takes a while to come around to things. And even then, my first fight, which was of course with Tina,
Mhm.
which one of my favorites. There's things that I wish I could have done better. I could have done better or differently. The fight was fine as it was, but you always think back. You're like,
Yeah.
but that's just because when you're new, you just don't know. The door is open, but you're only entering a room. You're not. I mean, even still, you're just going from one room to another, to another, to another. You're never gonna fully reach the end
Right.
to be like, I'm cookies now. I'm still being oven baked. So, uh, but not to trail off too much. Uh, Weapons. I actually wanted a very make specific bit in each of these podcast episodes where I discuss with all of you uh, our weapons, because we accrue weapons over a course of time. I have a few of them. I discussed each and every one that I have on the previous episode. Of course, my main Paul Chen, my Viking dagger. I've got a staff from a previous cast member who's no longer with us. I've used. I haven't even been able to use it. I would like to, but every time I try to use it, someone's like, "Hey, would you like to use this instead?" I'm like, but uh, bring it out. But what are your weapons? What do you have?
As far as personally own, I have um a hand and a half broadsword. I have a Viking axe that was given to me, and other than that, I have two shields that I made
Yeah,
myself.
yeah, yeah. I've got a.
Um,
Keep forgetting I have a small Viking shield too.
mhm,
It's small because I'm small. But yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
but other than those are the only two I personally own. Um, my wife has a staff that she's retired from use in
Hmm.
show. But other than that, any other weapon that I've ever used was always borrowed.
Yeah,
And I have to
I
say that,
mean money. So sometimes
oh
sometimes
yeah,
that borrowed weapon is probably the best option because you get to
hmm
try something completely different that you
right.
never otherwise would have used, and
And
opens your
one thing
world.
I realized, and the whole reason I even mentioned is shield. Not very many people, other than like if you do reenactments like this, you don't really realize that the shield is a weapon too.
Yeah,
And you know, popularly, Captain America.
sure.
Even in the last one where he had him, basically his gauntlets on his arm.
Bucklers,
Um,
exactly. Yeah,
those his use of the shield as both an offensive and a defensive weapon are amazing. And then depending on what time frame you're in, the heater style shields. There's a point at one end. Guess what a point's good for? Going into somebody.
indeed.
Whether
It's
it's
about
wood,
making a point.
metal, whatever it is, yeah, someone's gonna get the point of that one.
And
But
of course, Bosk or Bosk. That's a Star Wars character. The boss
right.
of some shields would have otherwise been pointed as well,
Mhm.
if not round, but sometimes, if not always, for the purpose in regards to what we're talking about, would be metal.
Right.
You'd have a metal bosk, jeez, a metal boss, and
You got Star Wars on the
that,
brain today.
yeah, and that would be pretty devastating to get hit with. It's a hollow shield, right? It's just a
Mhm.
film of metal, but still getting hit in the head by pretty much dome of metal.
Right. Um, and that's one thing that I always took away is it doesn't matter if you have a weapon in your hand. You always have a weapon.
Precisely. Because I
What
mean, I love doing hand to hand and in measure stuff
exactly?
almost probably more than weapons, in
Hmm.
all honesty. And I like using improvised weapons that are not swords and axes and daggers.
Right.
Um, that reminds me of the quote from Buffy in season 6 when Buffy is talking to the character Spike, who is a vampire, and he's explaining how he has killed other slayers. And he's like, you need to pick up your weapon, the stake, right?
Hmm.
But I already have mine. It's his teeth. He's a vampire. They both have superhuman strength. But he just needs to bite you. You have to reach for your weapon.
Yeah.
It's the same deal if you have a gauntlet or
Yeah. That's one thing that
pretty
even
intense
growing
stuff.
up was always drilled into my head. If you don't have a weapon and there's not a rock on the ground, there's not dirt on the ground that you can toss in their face, you were born with 5 of them. 2 hands, 2 legs, and a brain. If you use your brain, 9 times out of 10, you've already won.
Indeed, unless it's a raisin brain.
Well, I mean, nowadays that's to each their
Nowadays,
own,
most people
but
do say raisin brains, right?
yeah.
Um, so of course we've delved into that we've done fights. So you fought with your first was Irish here.
Mhm.
That was of course the Battle of Glen Mama. Had nothing to
Yep.
do with Mama. Um, the next one we did was Cressy, the 100-Year War, and then we did another year. But how many fights have you had?
There as far as
Doesn't matter if
actual
it's a feature fight. It can
okay.
be feature fight. It could be lane fight. It could also be those tournament fights we've been doing.
Mhm. Um, let's see here. There was prior to my first actual feature, I had lane fight. So then there was the feature. There's another feature the next year, um,
Were
which
you were you involved in the Sir Lancelot lane fight when our director came in on a horse to attack us when we were trying to burn Guinevere at the stake?
yes,
Yeah, that was a weird lane fight.
yeah, it was
So I remember,
weird, but I mean, there was that one. So yeah, that means just about every year that I've done it has either been a feature fight, a lane fight, tournament
melee,
fight. Yeah,
melee,
well, yeah, melee's been an every year thing.
melee. To the listeners, a melee is like a, if you want to compare again to wrestling, it's like the Royal Rumble or a Battle Royal. Uh, there's any number of us. Usually, it's around 30, 32 for a chessboard, but
Right.
there's been more. Where everyone is just fighting at the same time. That in itself is the core of our show. Doesn't matter about the feature fights. Really, people are coming to see that melee,
Yeah.
and that is where the most importance of accuracy and intent and stuff really shines. Sometimes it gets glossed over because it is a bit of a cluster.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the melee, I find that that's really where you can, aside from training, in the new tournament fights, that's where you
Mhm.
can sort of pick and choose who you fight with and sort of learn things from each person, or just
Right.
randomly get into it and just have like a little mini 5 to 10 move feature fight with whoever you come across.
Hmm.
Um, so that's such an interesting concept. It's pretty much the medieval battles that reenactors do, like SCA. Same concept, just on a smaller scale. And but in regards to the fight stuff, what is your trying to come up with that situation here. But what? Oh yes, I wanted to divulge into that lane fight. So that was our first year,
Right.
and this is no knock on the director, but it took forever for us to even do it. Right? It was announced, and then like
Yeah.
2 weeks before the show, or 3 weeks before the show, hey, by the way, let's get everybody together and do this. So we
Mhm.
do it, and it's not that great. Come back another week,
Right.
and just it felt like nobody understood what was going on. The
Mhm.
concept was pretty clear to me, even though I
Right.
had no clue what I was doing because I was like a new year. It's basically okay. This group of people are going to come in. They're just going to do like 3-5 moves, knock people out, rescue Guinevere, and just trollop off. Um, but I remember what side were you on? Were you on the one coming into, or one of the ones with me
I was with
riling the
you.
crowd? Okay.
I was with you because I was on the same side as you.
Yeah.
Character wise, um, I was actually the one that caught Guinevere and Lancelot
Likewise.
together.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the character I played as well. Colgravance. He
yeah,
catches
mine
them
was
together
Askmore.
and
I
is
think
like,
we actually, I think it, for our story purposes, we were actually together when we caught them.
yes.
Um, and that's why that worked out.
And in character you kept asking more.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, uh
Yeah.
let's just not. um but in any case, yeah, there was some
11 years
weird
later, I'm still,
asking more.
yeah,
Uh
well,
but
sure.
so we had like what, 6 of us that were supposed to burn Guinevere at the stake. Way too many people in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
On both sides. But I'm not the director. He had a really great idea, great vision for it, and it
Hmm.
executed wonderfully. But at the time when you're new, you don't really know what's going on. But when we started doing it for the show, and I don't want to judge or knock anybody, but I felt like nobody had a clue what we were supposed to do. Right? I mean, I got a pretty
No,
clear idea.
no,
It's
we
like
didn't.
it was
I'll admit
riled,
it. I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. You were over there riling up the crowd, and I'm just standing
which
there
is
like,
all we were supposed to do.
yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, how do you like your queen? Roasted or spicy? Well done, medium well. So I'm like, no, I get that part. So I'm like, and then some people like, oh, well, maybe we should wait for a signal. Like, no, let's just rile up the crowd and do what we do. And then if they
Mhm.
come, they come. If not, then maybe someone will kill us.
Right?
Um, or we'll kill the queen.
Right?
Of whom we absolutely love the person.
Oh
Um,
yes.
and then of course our director and his group comes in, absolutely obliterates us for like 3 moves. I made a point of working with the director there because not for any like clout or anything, just he would have known what he wanted out of it,
Right.
and he was just nope, just knock it three moves. Here we go, boom, 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 down. Just stay down. Give us like 5 minutes. Get back up. You're good. Whereas I
Hmm.
saw some other people trying to like put on like a 10 move fight, and I'm like, cool, but whatever he wants. It was that was the only
Yeah, I think
fight
it
that I've
was.
had.
Oh God, who
But
was it that came at me during that? I actually think director at the time knocked you out, knocked me out, and then went up and
yeah, so here's a
yeah.
funny
So literally, I
historical.
only lasted like another 5 seconds past you.
Yeah, here's a funny historical sidebar during that. And one of those, after the first time when we realized what we're doing,
Hmm.
and our director's like, we need to get somebody in there that's going to be a leader because even though some of us at that point, I already figured just rile the crowd up, but I'm not a
Hmm.
leader. I'm not. The station is just a knight. We were just knights, but
Right.
uh, but we were with some be mean, but some dumb people that were in that fight. Some people with a heart of gold, just like maybe weren't aware at the time.
Yeah.
Um, because I'm absolutely dumb as well. So he was like, "All right, we're gonna put this person in there, and we're gonna help him rile the crowd." Of course, great friend who's no longer with us. We discussed some of that, some of his wonderful work in the past episode. But prior to him entering, I'm riling up the crowd, talking about, "Oh, how do you want your queen? Medium rare, well done, roasted, whatever." Just being an absolute villain to the crowd.
Mm.
And this guy dressed up as a pirate, who's probably like in his 50s, 60s, pulls out a gun, pirate gun, Not a real.
Right.
Well, I've done pirate shows as well, and our pirate people, I mean, their guns are real. But whether it was or not, so he pulls out a gun because he's drunk, absolutely wasted, and he aims it at me point blank, like he's gonna, like he's gonna rescue the queen, like freaking Johnny Depp coming in. Where's the rum and the bum? I'll have both. I did a very horrible Johnny Depp right there. But our friend comes in, just so casual and so like Clint Eastwood, just strides in, not even a thing. Grabs the guy's hand, gently brings it down, pushes him aside, walks around the circle. I move about, or it is so effortless. He was an absolute star in our group, an absolute champion. He was someone to strive to be like. Uh, that's my only like funny historical side moment of that fight. Otherwise, it was kind of awkward. I did our director actually come in on a horse? Sometimes my memory's not exactly. I know he wanted to.
He wanted to, but he didn't. He wasn't able to. There wasn't enough space.
Right, but I remember one day I think he was at least horseback.
He, yeah, he came in, but because I think,
But he got down.
yeah, he got down and then came in.
Yeah, because I remember he wanted it to be horseback because Lancelot would have been, and that would have been such a. We don't utilize horses in our show, only the joust field. I love
Right.
horses, but they can also be unpredictable, and you don't want
Oh
that
yeah.
in a crowd of people.
No.
Um, but
I
still,
think one year, our director was also a part of the joust troupe,
he is
and I
he's an
think that
amazing
was.
jouster. He
Oh
brings
yeah.
what we do to the joust field, which a lot of joust troops don't do.
Trying to remember what year that was. Was that Cressy year as well?
Yes, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Memory years
Yeah.
ago, but I believe so.
Again, but no, that was always interesting, and I've always wanted to have things big enough to where we could have horses on the chess field.
Eh,
But at the same time, I'm with you that unpredictability that comes with having,
an animal.
really any type of animal
Yeah.
out on the chessboard
Even
like
if it
that
even if it
is
was a dog, a trained dog, because
right.
you gotta realize you'd have to put these animals through the rehearsal phase that we go through,
Hmm.
and situations that we talked about earlier that are improv, they're not
Right.
gonna understand. So what I would love for our show to do is to involve animals in a more accurate medieval setting, because you'd have a village like we try to build,
Right.
and they would have pigs and chickens and sheep and such.
Yeah.
We should take over the sort of petting zoo kind of thing. But I don't mean petting zoo. I just mean
Right.
having our village area have some animals that get to just wander around and chill. They don't have to be part of the show. They don't have to be touched.
Hmm.
Just be there because that's what they would be doing back then. You know, we as our group with our closed off village areas can just feed them and direct them and make sure they're okay and well. But I wish we'd integrate animals more in that sense, in a more
Yeah.
vicarious, rather than having these petting zoos or elephants that are being forced to carry the weight of a bunch of people when they're Asian elephants and they should be in Asia. Or camels, same reason.
Yeah.
Ponies, so on and so forth. Of course, that's a whole other
It's like
discussion,
I
but
get the ponies section of it. I get that. But elephants, camels in medieval Europe,
hmm
which is the area we're supposed to be in, I mean, like if it was, section in the main continental Europe area, okay, it's more plausible with that.
yeah,
But
no, I've come to realize we absolutely are running a Renaissance festival. Nothing about our show, with the exception of the chess match people, is medieval.
right.
Like, I'm not knocking the show either. I love it. Obviously, I don't do
Oh
any other
yeah.
show, but we have booths selling Renaissance to modern food. We've got
Mhm.
booths that look like the same kind of booths you see when you go to a Renaissance or even a normal festival, like a strawberry festival and stuff
Right.
like that. Everything is a festival. It's not medieval. It's a festival. I wish we would create a medieval, historical, accurate marketplace,
Hmm.
and like Lionel, sell accurate medieval food and stuff like that. But yeah, you never know. Really, it's more about just having fun and the experience.
Yeah.
Sort of the cheeky medieval concept. But if it were me, I would go hardcore medieval, and vendors, I'd build them their booths, and it would be a historical accurate booth, and the
Right.
food courts would be historically accurate. There would be like a food market, stuff like that. Blah blah blah.
Hmm.
Our chess match would have a weapon rack. You'd have the prison thing that we now have, the jail cart, stuff like that. It
Yeah.
really adds to it. It adds to walking into it and believing it,
Hmm.
rather than walking into it. Oh yeah, yeah, it's like Bay Area or Hogstown or Disney, um, which is still wonderful. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'd like more historical accuracy.
Yeah, but before I started doing fairs, a phrase I used to live with or live by, and that was chivalry is not dead until I die. Then I met everyone at fairs. It's just like I can die happy now.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about it. Because that's one thing. It sounds archaic nowadays. The concept of chivalry,
hmm
you know, and
Most people
all,
just want
but
to shiv you. They don't want to deal with chivalry.
right,
Chivalry.
exactly. Um, but that's one thing that I actually enjoyed was being around people who thought in that same frame of mind that how you treat a person, even in as a character, is in a way a representation of your actual person.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can pretend to be the most evil character out there, all right?
As I
But
have.
your interactions between your castmates, not out in front of all of the guests, the patrons, however you want to describe,
hmm
them, but in front of your fellow cast members, all right, as people, that interaction right there is really, who you are, and that's how they see you. That's how they know you. That's how you know um, our directors make judgments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could. Is it possible that I could play, an evil character? Yeah. Is it more than likely that I'm going to be portrayed as a good person playing a knight role or as a warrior role? Yes. Why? Because that's what I portray.
Here's a tip for any new people that eventually might listen to this episode. It does not matter what you are cast as
Mm-mm.
when you're doing SCA or uh, medieval and Renaissance festivals. It does not matter what you are cast as, whether you are king, queen, or peasant. What matters is what you bring to the table. You could be knight number 10, and if you have the most outgoing personality, you will be the life of the show.
Exactly.
Like Caleb did the episode with the Assassin's Creed Valhalla
Hmm.
when he was a wee lad and was the peasant. He was the life of the show. He really was
Exactly.
a memorable character,
Oh yeah.
and that I think people gloss over. They have to be noble, or they have to be an important role, or this or that. It
Oh
really
no.
just be yourself and bring that role, whether you're acting on stage, on film, theater,
Hmm.
Renaissance Festival, Medieval Festival, SCA, HEMA, whatever. Just
Yeah.
bring that personality to life.
It's like I've noticed that the higher up your cast is more restrictive on how you can portray your role because now
Like I
you
said, yeah.
have all of these rules. It's like you take, let's just take Caleb for example. Brought him up when he was playing as his parent peasant character. He had no rules to follow. Yes, he had the basic guidelines. Okay, you're a peasant. This is true of your character. All right, but everything else that was all him.
Yeah.
He was able to portray, you know, all of those characters beautifully. All right, and then, excuse me, as he moved up in social standing, the medieval social standing, he used to complain that he didn't feel like he could do as much, and it's true because now you have all of these rules. Okay, you're a king, all right. That means not only do you have X, Y, and Z for responsibilities for other parts of the show. Like one, you have to be seen. All right. You have jousts to attend now. You have all these other responsibilities for the show that you have to worry about. On top of how you are portraying your character to the crowd.
Yeah, to an extent to compare it, it's like you have a script and then you have blank pages. But
Hmm.
when you are, I won't even say higher up in the station, when you are given a position that requires you to be certain places or say certain things, those
You're
blank pages become less and less. But even
right.
still, I would actually disagree to some extent in terms of like someone being a king, having a very limited outlet in terms of sorry, now it's me. In
Mhm.
terms of acting, because I see a lot of people try to portray what they think a king should be, and in all honesty, I think you should just portray what you want to do. Like Dan is always an absolute character. He don't care. Dan is gonna be Dan, and he's gonna be the best one out
uh,
there. Um,
I
his
actually found my letter from him.
hmm
What was it? Oh God, Joan of Arc year.
yeah.
The last show that we did actually, before the pandemic. So it's like I found my letter from him, from his character, I should say, and oh my God, it got not only myself but my mom and my wife rolling.
hmm
Even though
I would,
my wife had heard it before, just
yeah,
it got us
memory
all rolling. It's
comes back to
great.
you.
His play on AC/DC's Big Balls song was amazing. And then it completely went in a totally opposite direction.
hmm
Like the way he worded it, you thought this was getting more and more perverse. And it's just like, then at the very end, it's just like, that was not what I expected at
No.
all. And it's just
Uh,
like complete flip, mind blown. Okay, on to next subject.
hmm yeah, so that's one of our improv games. We'll do a whole episode on improv as well. But to narrow things down as we creaking chair, to narrow things down as we head to the eclipse of the episode here, podcast. Um, you do, not sure if you still do, but you started doing laser burning art, correct?
Yeah, I have a laser engraver, um, which I do. I was experimenting with, and I had posted some pictures of it um, on my Instagram.
hmm
And but yeah, I do that. I've been trying to figure out the program still a little bit more. Life has a tendency of getting in the way of
Always, always.
anything that we ever want to do. Um, but I have one more test I want to run, and if it works on the EVA foam that I have, everything is now game for me.
hmm
Um, but I actually took a piece of leather that I had and did the Assassin's Creed Valhalla symbol on it. Um, I did a couple Star Wars related symbols on a couple pieces of just little scrap wood type items, and it worked out great. I've actually cut out patterns in paper with it. Um, Biggest thing with it, especially with anything, is just make sure you don't burn, you don't start a fire. But that's one thing that I'm going to be getting into. I haven't tried it on metal as much because of how reflective metal can get. I don't want to take the chance of it, burning up the laser head.
Right. I'm sure you can probably find a YouTube tutorial to help you there. Of
Oh
course,
yeah.
none of this is historically accurate to medieval, but it in the sense that a lot of us have sort of artisan crafts that we do. You know, I had leather crafting.
Mhm.
and a few other things that I do, such as the channel here, which of course I'm going to get you into if you want to some live action stuff again once I get back down. Um, but that's definitely something that you find is very common in festivals, the circuits we do. It's absolutely a kind of a market that you can explore.
Right.
Um, you said you have an Instagram. Do you mind promoting? Do you want people to see your Instagram?
Um. Yeah. Hold on. I gotta remember my. I remember my info. It's been way too long since I've actually realized that. Hey, I, actually need to promote this stuff.
What I do.
Yeah. No. My Instagram. I get it to come up here. Um. It is DRK Angel 319 is my tag. So although the running joke with my wife about how it spells, it looks like Dr. Kangle. Um,
Mm, mm.
yeah. So whatever, it works. Um,
Maybe it's Dr. Can Gel because you can gel with anything.
sure, we'll go with that one.
Yeah, at least 319 things.
Right? And still adding.
Indeed,
But yeah,
indeed.
as far as like the pictures on there, I got everything from um different little cosplay ideas, a lot of food items that I've come across, um, as well as the laser engraving. Let's see here. I think the last post was actually of a coffee cup mug, whatever, that I had found at Books a Million. It was for the for Star Trek. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's got my last pictures for my Darth Revan. Well, it originally started out as a Darth Revan cosplay that I was working on, but has now been conglomerated into like three different original ideas for characters
Yeah,
based off of the Old Republic
that
game
is really the
series.
best thing to do. Is you find a basis and then you make it your own.
Oh yeah, it's and the costume idea that I have, it works because not only does it work for a Jedi character, it works for a Sith character, and it also works for a bounty hunter character.
Yeah, anytime I want to do a Star Wars cosplay,
Mhm.
everyone's like, "Oh, I want to be a Jedi. I want to be a Jedi." But all of the cool outfits I think of and see on like Etsy, the little bits and pieces that you can put together
Mhm.
from various different shops, all kind of come together into like a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I was in the Star Wars universe, yeah, sure, I'd probably want to be a Jedi just for, live life on easy mode. But
Mhm.
in all honesty, I'd probably want to be something like a smuggler or a scoundrel or a bounty hunter.
Right.
Someone like a Han Solo or a Boba Fett or Mando to be more modern.
Mhm. Um, the actual tutorial that I'm following for the armor is a guy I found on YouTube. Um, Goes by the name on there of Riser. It's Ryzer.
Mhm.
Um, but he's actually doing a Mandalorian armor um, tutorial, which is what I've been following. I still have to get the chess piece put together, but
Yeah,
well, put back together. I had originally finished what he had, and went to pack it up for a visit to Florida, and it fell apart on me
I imagine.
because I
Yeah.
used too thin of foam, um,
Hmm. Mood,
and then was
mood.
trying to do it with, because I went from 4 millimeter foam. Now I'm trying to do it with 10 millimeter foam, and now it's not bending the way I need it to.
Mm.
So I hopefully found a happy medium with a 6 millimeter that I'm going to start working with. Um, and again, if that laser engraver thing works out, a lot of my other detail work is going to come out looking a lot better. So
Yeah, and you definitely should explore that because that is also a niche talent that our group doesn't have.
Mhm.
Like we've got some leather crafters that definitely
Oh
do
yeah.
better than me. I'm more of
Well, I
the
actually do still
recreational.
have the bracers that you made for originally my wife, but when I guess throughout the course of events, I ended up using them more than she did.
That's fine.
But
Yeah, the ones that I did for you guys, if you could send me a picture so I could post that, because I don't have that anymore. Unless I do, maybe. I don't know. I've been through at least two different computers and lost information on both transitions because I'm stupid. But that was the first time where it kind of clicked, where I had the correct tools.
hmm
I wasn't scratching details into the leather. I was
right.
actually using tools to doodle. And that's what I like in terms of leather crafting, like drawing and making art in the leather and then
hmm
painting it, stuff like that. I tried to do, and I got to try again. One of my problem is when I do something new, it's the first time I'm doing it, and it's for someone.
hmm
So usually I'm going to get it wrong, or it's going to take a while longer than it really should.
Right.
Like I made pauldrons for Other Dave, and it took me a year because I was so afraid of getting it wrong or this or that,
hmm
when really it could have just taken all of literally an afternoon, and it came out wonderfully for him.
Right.
Um, so I'm better with bracers, specifically simple bracers, and I'm still trying to figure out buckles. I did the buckles for our director, and that just for some reason I couldn't grasp the physics of that, and I don't know why.
Hmm.
Doesn't even matter how hard you try. But but yeah, no, that was the first one that I was very proud of because I had the right tools and you guys gave me a specific idea. I love
hmm
being given a box to work in. Like, do
Right.
this, specifically this. And like, bippity bop, there you go. Whether it's digital art, like I did some art for Zach, but
hmm
also some for myself, like recent stuff. I like being told specific parameters because then you can work within those parameters and push those buttons and do something different than they may have even thought was possible. But those were very good. They were green and just had kind of like a Celtic, I believe, a Celtic or sort of Norse dragonfly design on them. And they were
Yeah.
just simple rope, but lace bracers.
Mhm. Yeah,
Oh,
I
go ahead.
think through use, the greens kind of faded out into the black, but no,
Yeah.
the design's still there. But yeah, I'll get a picture and send it to you. At least as best as I can get one of them.
Yeah, and once you're back down and integrated into doing some live action stuff here in the channel, I can always touch them up. Um, but beyond that, sir, trying to think of anything else we can sort of cover. Um, I do want to briefly go over because I'm actually going to be posting these again, but I don't know if the episode you're in will be posted in that sense. But of course, previously we had on this channel a fight show of sorts. It was a very guerrilla sort of whatever. Um,
Mhm.
it was very much a demo reel of our fight combat. I'm going to be
Yeah.
posting those again with commentary. But you did one of them,
hmm
not a fight,
I was involved.
but
No, I was involved in it. Like I was, I think it was
with other Dave.
Big Zach and other Dave.
Hmm. A
Um,
preacher and Templar. And that
mhm,
was one of the first ones that I was able to really get across what I wanted out of that originally was to make
mhm,
a cinematic medieval series, which is obviously what we'll do moving forward once we can get videos back up that are live action. Make it more cinematic, like a Game of Thrones or a Fallen Kingdom, but actually try practical medieval stuff rather than the historian approach. But you were in it. I'd love to get you in more because I have a cat meowing at the door. But that's not the reason. Because we all work really well together and can always come up with better ideas and always learning and growing from that.
oh yeah.
And then,
Um, I
go ahead.
know Caleb's actually. Last time I was down was a couple weeks ago for doctor's appointments, but got a chance to get with Caleb and swing some swords around. Got a chance to test out my new lightsabers, which again are up on my Instagram. Um, and got a chance to test those out. So I know that those are most definitely, as the ad says, combat ready.
Hmm.
Not only did they work against his saber, but they worked against metal. So
Indeed.
that was my big thing. I thought that I was going to come back, down a blade, but they held
Sometimes that
up. They held
happens.
up. Yeah, they held up. They held up nicely. I don't have to worry about ordering a new blade. And so yeah, they stand up. The ones I got were from Saber Masters,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Um,
yeah, those worked out great. Of course, his are a more U.S. based brand, but
mhm.
um,
Right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap things up. That was it for this episode of the Talk Past podcast. Of course, I'm the host, NC. We'll get our guest host, the War Queen, back in here for more episodes, of course. But this was my guest, Dave, who
mhm.
does air with us and will, of course, be featured on the live action series is once we get back into that. But until then, it was nice talking.
Yep.
Bippity bop.
Alrighty.